New perspectives, important voices, influential ideas. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
Do this quick. And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here, Tuesday, October 23rd. So, folks, look, winter is coming, and that means often in the bedroom, one person's cold, the other person's really warm. Why is that? Because the sheets you have might not be breathable. But our friends at Boll & Branch make the world's most comfortable sheets, loved by 3 U.S. presidents, more importantly, loved by me. They're fabulous, and for the winter, they have these luxury flannel sheets. They're soft, they're warm, and breathable. And that's the key, so everyone stays the right temperature. And you can try them 30 nights risk-free. No questions asked. If you don't love them, and their promises, if they're not the softest sheet you've ever slept on, full refund, no questions asked. And here's the best part. You can try them $50 off if you go to Boll & Branch, B-O-L-L, and branch.com. And when you check out, there's a little box for a promo code. Type in Dean, as in me, your buddy, Dean, $50 off and free shipping. That's right. Go to bollandbranch.com. Check it out. They have great blankets, they have great towels, and now great flannel sheets for the winter. Bollandbranch.com, promo code Dean. But right now, in studio, he got here early. It's the one, the only Congressman Khanna, Democrat from California's 17th District, Silicon Valley, serves on the House Armed Services Committee, House Budget Committee, Vice Chair of the House Progressive Caucus. Congressman Khanna, nice to see you again in person.
Great to be back on.
So, by the way, and it's live streaming on Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, or you can check it out on Twitter at Dean Obadala, and you can see Ro in person. So, Congressman, welcome to New York. It's a nice day for New York. I'm glad you were here, not a crappy day.
You can walk around.
I didn't walk around today too much. I wrote an article for the Daily Beast this morning. I prepared for the show. There was a report. Do you know Muslim Advocates, the organization?
I do.
They had a new report came out Monday about the 80-plus candidates who use anti-Muslim bigotry in this cycle. About 34 made it to the general election, but most of them are going to lose. And their hope is that it ends the Republicans from using this. And I think they're too optimistic. I've written about it for too long. To the GOP, anti-Muslim bigotry is right up there with cutting taxes now. It's part of who they are. And it's so sad. It's
part of their whole fear. I mean, they're appealing to a cultural tribe. You're part of the tribe or you're not part of the tribe. And that's they obviously know that they don't have an economic message that's going to resonate. And so it's a cultural message. And they go back to the same playbook that Trump won on in 2016. I don't think it's going to work this time.
I hope not. I mean, Donald Trump is out there literally lying. I mean, he had a new statement today. Jim Acosta from CNN asked him about the idea of proof that there were Middle Easterners in the caravan. I was looking for the exact quote that he said, but he said, Trump said something along the lines like, there's no proof of anything. There's no proof of anything. This is his new gaslighting, literally saying there's no proof of anything. Essentially, it's only what he says is what's proof. This is stunning to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, he has chosen to just take fact and reason and evidence, all the things that defined American democracy, out of his politics. And it's very sad because it's not that he's original. I mean, there have been people like this throughout history who tell lies to gain power. It's actually utterly boring. But he's using this and really hurting what makes America unique. And the challenge is, well, how do you respond? Well, you respond, in my view, by doubling down on reason, fact, evidence, and counting on the basic decency of most Americans. And I think that's going to work, and the midterm elections are going to show that.
You know, I had one of the authors of How Democracies Die on this show, and I also read Malin Albright's book, Fascism. And especially How Democracies Die made this great point that if you're going to counter someone like Trump, who is trying to chip away at democracy, you can't do it by countering him the same way. You can't start lying like he does, because then you're destroying any sense of what the truth is anymore. And also, you can't go with him as he tries to destroy our checks and balances and our separation of power and have candidates run the same type of thing. But at the same time, you have to fight back. And I just don't know where the line is, to be honest.
Well, I don't think you fight him in the way that he is fighting. If you just say, okay, we're going to lie too, and we don't believe in truth, and we don't believe in evidence, we don't believe in reason, then you lose the essence of what American democracy is. And then it becomes just like any other historical nation, which is a clash of power. So you can't undermine our very ideals. I think the way you fight him is by having the burden of persuasion, reason, appealing to people's better instincts. And I think the reason the midterms are so important is that's how we've been running. And I'm hopeful, very, very hopeful, we're going to at least win the House. So it'll be validation of that. Otherwise, people will say, oh, it doesn't work. But, Václav Havel said that he doesn't believe politics is dirty. He faced much longer odds than any of us did. And he says that people who say, oh, all politicians lie are actually debasing the idea and discouraging people from going into politics. And it's not true. Yes, some people lie, just like you have bad people in all types of places. So I don't think Trump's politics are going to be the lasting politics for this country.
I certainly hope not. And so let's talk about some of the big issues going on. You have been very outspoken over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. And today, Erdogan, the president of Turkey, said it was a planned and brutal murder and went through the details, the Saudis, how their cover-up and everything. What do you think, and I saw your op-ed for the San Francisco Chronicle, but what do you think the U.S.'s reaction should be to the killing by the Saudis of Khashoggi?
Well, it should be a window, a wake-up call into the pattern of Saudi barbarism. Obviously, the Khashoggi incident has touched a chord because we say, how could you do this to a journalist? How could you do this to someone when they're in a safe place like a consulate? But if you look at the Saudis' war in Yemen, and you look at the figures, 12 million people face famine in the next 30 to 90 days. Just to put this in context, 800,000 people died in Rwanda. 100,000 died in Bosnia, and those captured our attention. In the worst famine in the last 100 years in West Bengal, 3 million died. And the Saudi bombing is contributing to 12 million deaths. So what Khashoggi should open our eyes is to this humanitarian crisis and to the Saudi pattern of barbarity. And we should demand a cessation of all violence.
In your San Francisco your op-ed for the San Fran Chronicle, you wrote about, since 2015, the Saudis have launched an estimated 18,000 airstrikes on Yemen, attacking hospitals and schools, water treatment plants, and blockade on food and fuel. What's the role in the United States playing in the Saudi military strikes?
Well, we're refueling their planes. We're basically, if the United States stopped refueling their planes, this campaign would end. And if the president or the Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense picked up the phone and said, Saudis, you got to stop this, they would stop it. Now, look, we can debate the politics. I mean, they argue that they need to support the Saudis in Yemen in the fight against al-Qaeda. That's false. Al-Qaeda is actually aligned with the Saudis in some of the fight in the Houthis. They argue that you need the Saudis against Iran. That's false. But putting all of that aside, wouldn't you, just out of basic decency, say, let's have a cessation of violence so we can get food in and we don't lose millions of people to starvation, and then we can look at the politics? At least let's put the brakes on. And that is completely in the United States' power to do. And this is what separates this crisis from even Bosnia and Rwanda. In Bosnia and Rwanda, we had a moral obligation to prevent violence, but we weren't a contributing factor to the violence. Here, we're a contributing factor.
And that gets almost no media coverage whatsoever. The role, you write an article, I saw you bring it up, and a few other members of Congress perhaps bring it up in the media. I can only remember you, but I'm sure others did. I know Bernie Sanders was trying to, with you, to stop the U.S. forces from being involved in Yemen.
Right. But
it gets almost no media coverage. We're actually supporting a war that's going on slaughtering civilians.
It gets no media coverage, in part because people say, I was talking to a producer, and he said, well, yeah, when you're talking about Yemen, people flip the channels. But I think this is not, we have to make it very, very simple. Do you believe the United States should be complicit or even stand idly by when 12 million people in the possible worst famine in the last 100 years die? I mean, and I think most Americans would say that's outrageous, and we don't want to be judged historically for that chapter in the world. And so I think that there's an obligation for all of us to talk about this, because I think most people, if they know the facts, would want us to stop aiding the Saudi coalition.
It's hard. The media's bias, regardless of where they are, is towards ratings. I mean, the mainstream media.
Yeah.
So when even a progressive channel show, not ours per se, because we're a little different, subscription-based, plays a big role in this, but for the MS or something like that, they might say, well, we can't cover it. We'll give it 3 minutes, and that's the end of it, because there are no ratings, as you were saying, on the producer. So there's another issue that I think deserves much more attention. We talked about it a little at the top of this show. The New York Times covered it. And the Trump's administration attempt now to narrowly define gender and to roll back protection of transgender Americans. And as the New York Times puts it, the way the Times puts it, the new definition would essentially eradicate federal recognition of the estimated 1.4 million Americans who recognize themselves as transgender Americans. This is horrible. What is this cruelty there's no bounds to the cruelty of this administration.
I mean, it's just pure bigotry. Basically, they're saying if you're transgender in this country, you're no longer protected. You're no longer protected if you're fired. You're no longer protected in terms of getting housing. You're no longer protected in any of your civil rights. And they are depriving transgender individuals of all their rights. And the amazing thing about the administration is they have no shame. A lot of times people will do it and do types of these things in stealth, and they wouldn't want to be blatant about it. But they're actually calculating that this is going to appeal to their base, that the bigotry towards transgender individuals is a political winner, and so they're out championing this. And there's no compromise. There's no dialogue on this issue. There just has to be a political fight and us winning by passing something like the Equality Act that David Cicilline has introduced that would provide equal rights for the transgender and LGBTQ community.
It's, to me, when I think so much of Trump, when I have to boil it down to one word, it's cruelty to me, so much of this man and so much of the currency of this administration. And that you have people who would otherwise, people of faith, evangelicals, who would otherwise, at least in the teaching of Jesus Christ, would be compassionate and caring to people, would actually cheer this kind of move. Because I think they've lost the chance on marriage equality. Now the Supreme Court's ruled they can't do it. But, all you have to do is think back 2004 election with Bush, and on the ballot they had referendums on marriage equality. That was to bring their base out. The GOP playbook for so long has been bigotry against the LGBT community, as well as the Muslim community and Latino. But this is almost one of their go-to communities that they attack and demonize all the time.
Well, there's a sense with the president of purposely creating the other.
Yes.
The sense of defining what it means to be a true American in very, very narrow terms, basically terms that encompass his base. And if you fall outside that definition, then there's no concern for you. As is evident by Trump's own admission that he's a nationalist, that if you don't fall in the definition of how he defines the nation, then there is no moral consideration. And I think Trump really believes that. And the implication of that is sad, of course, from a moral level. I mean, George Orwell said that the nationalism basically is this naive view that you can characterize human beings like you categorize insects. I mean, it's just this idea that someone doesn't have moral worth if they don't fit into your definition of a tribe. And Trump is motivated by that. So there's a moral problem with it, but there's also a problem in terms of our people who do care about this nation's success, because what has made this nation successful is this idea that we embrace challenges to our thinking. We don't stagnate as a culture. We don't have groupthink. We are vibrant. We are challenging each other. We're questioning each other. We're innovating. And that's actually our only shot of beating other countries that have billions of people and larger populations. And Trump is, unfortunately, he can't, as one individual, stifle that culture, but he's trying to do his very best.
And you're a child of immigrants, right?
Yes.
And my dad was an immigrant. If Trump really had his way, I don't know if either of us would be here. If he was president at a different time, perhaps your family could have immigrated here legally. My dad, being a Muslim refugee, I don't think would have had a chance to come here if Donald Trump would have had his way.
Well, there's no way that either of our families would have come here, because the civil rights movement in the 60s led to the Immigration Reform Act. And before the Immigration Reform Act, basically the United States said, we're going to have immigrants, but we're more or less going to have immigrants from Europe. I mean, that was
right.
The idea. And the act said, no, you have to have immigrants not just from Europe, but from around the world. And I've said this, I think, on your show before, but guess who argued then for family reunification? It was the the nationalists who said, well, if we're going to open up immigration from around the world, we at least need the Europeans here to be able to bring over their brothers and their sisters and their family so that America doesn't lose its European character. And that was really the argument for family reunification. And so the irony now that you have President Trump actually trying to deprive people of family reunification because he now sees family reunification being used by Asian Americans and African Americans and no longer just by European Americans. But Trump would never have been a vote for the 1965 Immigration Reform Act.
No, not at all. So let's take a quick break. We'll take a quick break. We're going to come back more. Congressman Khanna, a Democrat from California, is here in studio. We're going to chat more about a bunch of issues going on, from the caravan, what can the Democrats' closing argument be, and a lot more right after this break on the Dean Obeidallah Show. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day.
On Sirius XM Progress 127. The Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here, Tuesday, October 23rd. In studio with me, Congressman Khanna, our friend who's on all the time by phone, now here in studio, Democrat from California's 17th District, Silicon Valley area. So, Congressman, a lot to talk about. Let's talk about the Trump demonizing this caravan, and yesterday injecting with no evidence that there were Middle Easterns involved.
Right.
And the Democrats have not really engaged him in this. Has that been a conscious choice from up high, or has it just been individual members of Congress just staying focused on other issues that are relevant to their district or their state?
Well, I think we can't fall for Trump's distractions. I mean, he's
Right.
basically trying to change the topic because he knows people don't have adequate health care. Their salaries haven't gone up. They don't have good paying jobs, and he hasn't delivered in these communities. He's losing these races. It's a Hail Mary pass. And we shouldn't be talking about something that's ludicrous. We should be talking about issues that affect people in their daily lives.
Like hell, number one by far. Well, I've talked to Democratic candidates around the country running for Congress and sometimes for other offices, but mostly for Congress, in places like West Virginia and in New Mexico and California, New Jersey, New York, Florida, whatever. Every single one, the number one issue to them, it's not Trump. It's not his lies and his bigotry. It's health care for their family. And the Republicans sense it now, and they're trying to say they're going to defend pre-existing conditions when for years they were bragging Obamacare passed without one Republican vote. They didn't support one vote. They try to gut pre-existing conditions. We created the ACA. I think this is the issue that's not just a winner politically, but for people it is. The idea of expanding Medicare in a way that's responsible and makes sense and that could actually work. Because God forbid you expand it too quickly and it doesn't work and it collapses. So how do we do this? I think 2020, this should be the issue for Democrats to really deliver for Americans.
Well, I think it will be. I mean, look, every person if you talk to, their deductibles are going up.
Yeah.
It's not just the premiums. It's their out-of-pocket costs. Deductibles are about $12,250 for an individual, $5,000 for a family. That's a lot of money. The prescription drug costs are going up. And they want to know how are they going to get health care without going bankrupt or having these extraordinary financial burdens. And then they have situations where they have unexpected hospital bills or doctor bills that their insurance isn't covering. And we know what works. We know that Medicare works because you talk to seniors. You talk to people in their early 60s, they can't wait to get on Medicare. In fact, you look at people's Facebook or social media posts and they say, today's Medicare day. I finally qualified for Medicare. And so what we want to do is make sure that everyone has that health care. It's economical. It would cost less. It would free people up, by the way, to become entrepreneurs and start businesses and to move in the job market. It would help unleash America's economic growth. And so I think it is the issue from a moral and economic perspective facing the United States. And, of course, the Democrat solution is the only logical one because we know that Medicare works.
My mom's at Medicare, and it's a godsend. I mean, it's her lifeline. Without Medicare, I don't know how she would afford the bills. And still her bills are high because now she has a home health care aid, which is not covered by Medicare. And that's something, the idea of our elderly, our aging communities getting older and have to burn through all of their assets, even with Medicare in place, to become eligible for Medicaid to go to a nursing home. To me, it seems counter to the promise that this is the greatest nation in the world and that we should take care of our people. I've only have learned this now because of my mom's situation where she's literally burning through her assets, and when she gets nothing, maybe she get a reverse mortgage. They may talk about that now. But ultimately, you have to burn through everything that you would leave for her grand, not for me, but for the my sister's kids and stuff like that, just gone, just to pay for home health care aid.
Right. No, I mean, the experience, and that's where Medicare needs to be strengthened to cover some basic nursing home care, or to be able to cover care when you aren't independent. But here's the thing that even the president realizes, that Medicare is an extraordinary program, because now the president has taken to saying, oh, you know what's going to happen to the seniors if you let other people have Medicare, your care is going to go down. Well, first of all, this is just false, because the Medicare program that we are advocating would actually increase benefits for dental coverage, for vision, for things like nursing homes and independent living facilities.
Oh, that's great.
So it would strengthen it for seniors. Secondly, the president acts as if seniors don't have kids. I mean, seniors often have kids. Those kids are in their 40s and 50s. They want those folks to have health care. They don't want a sense that, okay, they get health care and their kids and their family don't. And expansion of Medicare will also come with the expansion of primary care doctors. It will come with the expansion of hospitals, and it will actually reduce costs because it will give more bargaining power to go up against these hospitals, to go up against these pharmaceuticals, and it will actually help seniors. So there's a recognition that Medicare works, and now the scare tactics are, well, you have something good, don't let everyone else have it, and I don't think people are buying that.
So say it was expanded. Right now you have to be 65 to be eligible. If it was brought down to, say, 60 or 55, how do you answer people, say, well, how do you pay for that? Because I've had Trumpers call and go, well, we're going to ration benefits then. That's just the talking point they hear from the right now, and they just repeat it on my show when they speak to me. And everything I read said that's not true. Is it then, it's just, do we have to contribute more? Or how does it work to make sure we fund it?
Well, it's a very simple thing. Right now, healthcare costs over 10 years is $49 trillion.
Wow.
Right? And if you went to Medicare for everyone, the cost would be $32 trillion. Now, you keep hearing Republicans talk about the $32 trillion. Of course, healthcare costs money. The point is it costs $17 trillion less, which it makes sense because you're taking out the insurance costs, you're taking out the hospital facility fees, you're taking out the pharmaceuticals. So how you fund it is people right now, they have to pay a premium. They pay thousands of dollars a year on their premium, and they have high deductibles. Instead, you would pay less, but you'd be paying for your Medicare. You'd be paying that fee instead. Let's say you're paying $2,000 right now to the private insurance. You wouldn't pay that. You'd pay $1,000, and you'd get healthcare. You'd get better healthcare for a cheaper price. And so when people say who's going to pay for it, all we're doing is the people who are currently paying for their private insurance, we're saying they can get something better, right. And we're taking out the profits that are being made by the pharmaceuticals, insurance companies, and hospitals.
Do you think the Democrats say, the best case scenario, we get the House and the Senate, but we don't have the presidency. But 2020, we get the presidency, let's say. Would Medicare for All, expanding it, be the only way, as opposed to, say, like a public option first and trying from there where people can buy in at any age if you can't actually do the, I'm not sure how you would do, I want this to work so much. I'm just trying to think of ways where insurance companies don't invest in lobbying against it because they think they're going to go out of business.
Right.
That's my pragmatic approach to this.
Well, the Medicare, even Bernie Sanders' bill, which I support, has a transition. It's not a overnight we're going to have no private insurance. There's a transition period. And there are many different bills towards this. You have some bills, Jeff Merkley, I think's bill has Medicare Advantage still there, where private insurance companies are participating in Medicare. Other bills have no role for private insurance. But I think what we want to start with is the ideal. What you want to start with is saying, in an ideal world, we would have Medicare, which covered everyone and took the obscene amount of profits of the pharmaceuticals and insurance companies out of the system and focused everything on healthcare delivery. Now, if we have to make a compromise for political reasons to get something through, obviously Democrats are going to move to take something that's going to improve human lives over not. But one of the things I think Democrats do sometimes is we compromise before we've even had the negotiation. I mean, we've got to start with what we want,
sure,
instead of starting with the compromise position and then giving even more away.
Well, that's true, because if you go in at public option, you're not going to even get that. So I think Medicare for All is a winner, and I think if it's sold to the American people in a way that's responsible, you're not going to lose your benefits. We're going to do this through a transition period, and it's going to work.
Right.
Because we might even do stress tests, like we'll do it. We'll expand it. We do whatever tests you have to. Then, okay, now we can say, here's all the numbers. We can move to the next group, whatever it might be, to give people the sense that this is being done responsibly. I've had some Trump supporters actually call and say, I'm a Trump supporter, but I support Medicare for All.
Wow.
And because they hear the same thing we do, that every industrialized nation has it for their people,
right,
and we're the only one that doesn't. And after a while, that is inconsistent with being told you're in the greatest nation in the world, because that's what you're told all the time. Then why don't you treat your people like they live in the greatest nation of the world? Why not treat them the way they are, the way they should be? So you've got some Trump supporters. So you're going to see Republicans come over when you do the pragmatic argument to them about this is really going to work. It's not pie in the sky. Here are the numbers. First year, we bring it down to whatever. I'm not going to give numbers, but whatever. Just say eligibility is now 65. It could be 60. And then in 2 years from now, we do a stress test. If it's working well, we'll go to 60, to 55 and 50. And all of a sudden, the other arguments disappear because they're like, okay,
right,
well, let's wait and see what happens. That's what I'm just saying from what I hear from people. That's all. Because I know Trump supporters and independents and progressives, of course, we want health care for ourselves and our family that's affordable and that it's there for you. And no family should go broke or concerned about going to the doctor because they're not sure if they can afford the bills. That's not America in 2018. It should not be.
And Trump himself was for a single-payer system. In his book, The America We Deserve, in 2000, he said, the Canadian healthcare system is much better than ours, and I'm usually for free markets, but when it comes to healthcare, we know what works, and that's a single-payer system. So it's economically works. Average person says, why can't I get Medicare? Employers are saying, why are you sticking me with these costs? It's crazy. Why are we competing with China and Europe, where we're stuck paying people's healthcare premiums, but our competitors don't have to.
Right.
So they don't want to be absorbing those costs. So for all these reasons, it's just good policy. And it's one of these few places where the Democrats have managed to get a simple message: Medicare for all. It's almost 3 words. We never have policies that are 3 words. So, we're even managed to break through.
That's a good one. You're right. Because for Democrats, sometimes our framing will be like 37 words and a comma and a semicolon. And people, what does this mean? And Trump's like, make America great again.
Right.
And we're like, Medicare for all. It's a winner because it's a good issue, and it's a winner because it's framed well. All right, let's take another quick break. Come back and chat more with our friend Congressman Khanna, a Democrat from California, right here in studio on the Dean Obeidallah Show. November 6, 2018 isn't just election day. It is judgment day for progressives and our vision of this country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. The Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show, live right here, Tuesday, October 23rd, in studio, Congressman Khanna, Democrat from California, who's going to go on Chris Hayes' show after this, but don't tune away from my show to watch. Okay, you can go watch him on Chris Hayes' show later and come back. In that hour, you're there. I have Danny Savalas, the legal analyst from MSNBC, here. Every Tuesday, he comes in for an hour, and we go through like legal issues that intersect politics.
I get, every time I come on your show, I get tweets, I get people saying, "Oh, I heard you." So you're building a national,
huge. I'm going to be
national base.
Progressive Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Mark.
You could aspire for better than that.
No, but hey, by the way, on Twitter, I'm at Dean Obeidallah, and follow Congressman Khanna there on Twitter. And let's talk about, we're a few minutes left in the top of the hour before you have to go. We're 14 days, 2 weeks from now, we will be sitting here as polls begin to close and start reporting on the results, because we're going to be here late that night, live to like midnight or 2 in the morning, frankly. What are you seeing? You're doing town halls, but you were just in New Hampshire helping a Democrat. What are you seeing on the ground that you can share?
I'm seeing extraordinary energy on our side, but I'm also seeing, unfortunately, energy on the Republican side. I think you're going to see a astronomical turnout. Now, I would have said 3-4 weeks ago that it's going to be disproportionate on our side, but I think you're going to have astronomical turnout on both sides. So this is one of those things where whoever hustles the most in the last 14 days is going to win. And it's going to be close, and every vote, every phone call, every postcard is going to matter. And look, let me tell you, having served in the House, one of the things I didn't realize until I got there was what difference it makes whether you have 219 seats or 217 seats. In the Senate, it matters, but not as much, because everyone can introduce legislation and you have more autonomy. In the House, the leadership basically determines the agenda. If you care that we haven't had a vote on gun safety laws, it's because we aren't in control. If you care that we haven't had a vote on the Dreamers, it's because we aren't in control. If you care that we haven't had a vote on more humane immigration policy, it's because we're not in control. We have to win back the majority.
And think about the GOP voted to repeal the ACA and end your coverage of pre-existing conditions, whatever, 50-something times. If we control the House, we can force Republicans to vote on our plan of Medicare for all.
We can.
And they have to be on record about that. We will have subpoena power. We will have chairs of committees who won't give a warm back rub to Don Jr. backstage. If you want to subpoena Don Jr., you could put him on camera the way they did Hillary Clinton. And more importantly, members of the administration, when there's scandals like that are doing this in the administration, we can have them in front of the cameras, answer questions, and tough questions about why are you doing policies like this, roll back on the idea of rights for transgender Americans.
And we could, I don't want to cite Anthony Weiner because he had such an a fall, but he used to, one of the things he was very clever at, he used to force the Republicans to vote on ending Medicare. He said, okay, you want to cut Medicare? Vote on it and put them in the defensive position and force them to own up to their irresponsible rhetoric.
Absolutely. So, Congressman, we're out of time. I want to thank you. It's great to see you in studio here. Usually it's by phone, and you're in California in your district, or
you've got a great studio. You're moving up in the world.
I know. Well, they just assigned it. Believe me. I mean, this used to be the studio. Steve Bannon was here every night. I'm not kidding. When Breitbart would be on right after us. And Steve would come in or in the morning.
So
he'd literally sit in this chair. Now he's gone. Thank God.
You're going to mastermind our next president, a progressive president.
A good president's going to help people, not a nationalist one. All right. So, folks, we're going to come back. We'll take a break, come back. The second hour, we'll have a lot of time for phone calls. We have a guest at the top of the hour for a few minutes from Planned Parenthood. But the rest of the hour is you are my guest. Give me a call, 866-997-4748. What should be the Democrats' closing argument on this 2-week run to the election? Be right back.